You probably know that today is World Mission Sunday. Throughout the whole world, all churches are supposed to take up a second collection and preach about the missions, at least to mention them, because we have a whole missionary church. We began as a missionary church, and even today, people go all over the world, learn different languages, so that they can spread the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, there was a movie, and this is an open session to correct me. I think it's The Keys of the Kingdom, and I forget somebody will shout it out, I know. And this Irish priest goes to China. Am I correct? Well, I think it is. So go to Netflix, probably Hulu. You can probably put it in your browser and just put in The Keys of the Kingdom. It's an excellent movie, made in the 50s probably. And it really captures the whole challenge to go to a foreign land to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ and all the stuff that got confronted. So it's a wonderful movie. I think you'll enjoy it very much. Having said that, about 20 years ago, I went to South Africa. There's a priest in the Archdiocese who's from South Africa. So another priest, he's a priest also, and myself, we went to South Africa to go visit his family. And while I was there, of course, they gave me the tour of the land. And Africa is an amazing place, completely different. I mean, you're in jungle practically everywhere you go. So we went up typically to Lake Victoria, or Victoria Falls. And on the way back, we stopped at a game preserve. And basically it was a kind of a secluded hotel, of course wrapped up in high fences. And there were like these cement washes around it too, so that the animals couldn't easily cross. The only ones that got across were all the baboons and all the monkey species. But one afternoon, the first afternoon I think we were there, I had this experience that was incredible. We got the word went out to everybody, the elephants are coming. Now, this hotel looked out at jungle. And in Africa, the jungle is weird. These trees grow up and they're actually kind of leveled off. And they're very dense, but you can see the tops of them. And then there was a huge watering hole that they had lights on, so you could even see the nocturnal animals that came in to drink. There were a bunch of different animals around there. But all of a sudden, the elephants, for some reason, started to come over toward the hotel. And there was an edge of the jungle that came up right to the hotel, and they came over to eat those leaves and to take those branches and swat off all their flies and everything. Well, I'm a very emotional person. I cry when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm excited, when I'm frustrated, when I'm touched. Sometimes I cry when I'm preaching, because if I'm preaching about something that's very powerful to me, my emotions open up. So I love it. So I'm standing there, and all these people from the hotel are there, and over come the elephants. They were as close as those pews right there. I mean, we were out on the edge of the lawn, and probably like this, and there was that cement gorge, and there they were, and everybody was just standing there in silence. Well, one of my priest friends, he's kind of a know-it-all. He knows a lot. I admire his intelligence, but he's always explaining things to me. He's always teaching me. It drives me nuts. So there I am watching these elephants, and I'm all teary and everything, and I hear him go, Perry, come here, Perry. I want to tell you about the elephants. I'm thinking, I don't want to tell me about the elephants. They're right there. So I pretended I couldn't hear them. I don't think I ever told him this, but I just ignored him because I was having a moment with the elephants. Now, it's funny because I'm reading a book right now called The Power of Now. It's extraordinary, very thick book. It's not thick this way, thick the information, but it keeps repeating. It keeps talking about how the only thing we have is the now. You've heard me say this before. You see, whatever even happened yesterday was yesterday. You can't have that. And you don't. The best you can get is a thought about yesterday, a memory of, which may not be very accurate, but it's your memory. And we don't have tomorrow, but we can have a thought about tomorrow, and tomorrow might not even come for us. So why would we go into a thought about what might not be and a thought about what was if it means that we're not going to be here in the now? So I'm reading this chapter in the book yesterday, and as I'm reading it, it says, when you're present in the now, one of the best ways to describe it is when you're present to a moment of nature, a beautiful sunset, or you look up at the stars, and then you give that real intelligent reaction. You just go, wow. Isn't that intelligent? Wow. And then it said, or you listen and hear a bird singing. And right then I became aware that these birds were singing outside my window. And I said to myself, Perry Leiker, those birds have been singing probably all morning. It's the first time I heard them. Because the mind is so busy. It's always active. It's always evaluating and checking out and saying, is it better, is it worse? Come here, let me tell you about the elephants. The mind is always going. But to live in the present and to appreciate, to just soak it in. Now, Jesus was amazing about living in the present, always. He took the present moment and he was able to see into it and see those around it and capture whether somebody else was there or not. He was so spiritually astute. So here he is, and it says that he's seeing his crowd, and he sees these Pharisees who were notorious for always observing how well they were doing. It wasn't what God was doing in them, it's what they were doing for God. Like God needs us to do anything for him, her, whatever. But there they were, always evaluating what they're doing. And it said that Jesus looked at them, and they were evaluating others and looking down on others, and they were very self-righteous. So, looking at them, he began to speak to these self-righteous men, and he tells them this little parable, real brief one. He says that two men come into the temple. One was a Pharisee. Right away, they should have realized he was going to burn him, and he does. He says, this Pharisee comes in, and he says, thank you, God, I'm not like those people over there. Oh, God. And especially not like this tax collector. Tax collectors were scorned by the people because they were Jews, fellow Jews that worked for Rome. They collected taxes. They collected extra taxes so they could skim off and fill their pockets with a little bit more. The Jews hated them. They felt they were untouchable. They were dirty. They didn't even want to be around them. Remember Zacchaeus climbing the tree because they wouldn't even let him get to the front of the line? Stay away. So he says, thank God I'm not like those deceitful, sinful people, especially like that tax collector. And then he starts listing all that he does. I pay tithes on everything, 10%. I fast. I do all this. I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. Look at me, God. I am just the best. And then, exactly. Oh, I thought that was a plan. Yeah. So then he points to the other one, the tax collector, the sinner. And he observes that the sinner came in his parable. He wouldn't even raise his eyes to the heavens. But he looked down, he said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Now, these two people in the parable were present in the temple. The one seemingly had no awareness he was even in God's presence. All he could do was look at others, disdain them, look down upon them, say he was better, and then list all of his accomplishments. Wasn't even aware. The other man was keenly aware of his sinfulness, keenly aware that he was disdained by others because he was doing things, cheating them. But he was also keenly aware of God's mercy. And although he wouldn't look up, and although he beat his breast, he turned and noticed. He was present right at that moment to the mercy of God. So Jesus' conclusion is, the exalted will be humbled, but the humble will be exalted. Because that man in that present moment was able to gaze at the mercy of God and take it in. And even though he was a sinner, and he probably wasn't going to change his job that day, maybe he was going to continue with the same activities, at least somewhere in him, he was deeply aware of how merciful God is, and he trusted in that. If you notice all the readings today about the mercy of God, all of them. Imagine you're the missionary that goes to China, Australia, South Africa, wherever, to spread the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And you'll notice I said the good news. And let's say today was the day you arrived and you were going to preach for the first time, and these are the scriptures you were handed. And let's say the group of people that you went to worshiped a God who was a rock or a tree or some volcanic ground that was always spewing ashes and steam, and they thought that was their God. And then you came and took these scriptures and began to preach to them about the mercy of God. And the God that I believe in, that I'm sharing with you, is a God who hears the cry of the poor. And He never looks down upon us. He's our refuge and our strength. He loves us. He cares about our needs, all of them. This would be, wow, the bonus of the century, to have these scriptures to preach for the first time to people, to introduce them to your and my God. This is our God. You know, I really believe that this book is just opening my eyes, especially when people come to me for counseling. I recognize so quickly how they don't live in the moment. They don't. They don't. Most people are so pained about the past. If they have troubles, they're pained. And they don't say things like, well, God, thank you for today, and thank you I'm alive. That was a nice meal. Even their meals become ugly inside because they're so pained about stuff in the past, or they're so worried about tomorrow. But we've got this Jesus who says, come here to the present moment. Pharisee, look at yourself. Do you really like that? Do you really like that? Would it be nice if you could even for a moment recognize God's presence in your life? And today, who does He hold up as an example to us? A sinner, a dirty person, a crook, someone who is always taking from his own people, hurting his own people to get more for himself. But the beautiful thing about that sinner was, if it was only for a moment, but I doubt it, it was probably much more often, he could stop and be in the presence of God and recognize God as a God of mercy.